lending or trading crypto. Every provider should complete the registration, and the regulation is not just for locally based companies, but also for those operating in the market but based elsewhere. And according to this Global Crypto Adoption Index, the top 20, Argentina is the 15th largest cryptocurrency market in the world. And when this happened, Max, you tweeted this out. You said Javier Milei makes his first major mistake. He never took the time to understand Bitcoin, and now he'll suffer the consequences. So tell me what this means for Argentina, why he did it, and why it was a mistake.
Right. So Javier Milei is an anarcho-capitalist, and his idea is to just let everything trade, and everything and anything can be money, and let the market decide. And in El Salvador, we're Bitcoin maximalists, and only Bitcoin is legal tender, and everything else is not considered to be, it's considered to be needing an unregistered security, and is discouraged because only Bitcoin is suitable for nation state level adoption. Everything else that's not Bitcoin is garbage, it's crap, it's shit, it's centralized, it's no good. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin. So anyways, with Javier Milei, he is taking this anarcho-capitalist approach where everything and anything can be traded, and which is a mistake because he's losing the appeal of making Bitcoin legal tender and eschewing all of the other crap out there, as we've done in El Salvador, and you see the benefits to El Salvador. And so I think that he's pushed his program back by several years. So eventually he will come to the same conclusion that President Bukele came to in El Salvador, but he's given himself an artificially big impediment or barrier to overcome now. He would be a lot better off if he just made legal tender and allowed all the benefits that come with Bitcoin. And that was my point of that tweet.
So help someone like me understand. So no, I think I understood half of what you just said. So why is him having people who trade in crypto register, why is that bad?
Well, there's crypto and then there's Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is decentralized, absolutely decentralized. There's nobody controlling it. It separates money from state. It's autonomous. It runs by itself.
It's blockchain. That is what they say, right? So, and the government can't control it like it can control regular currency.
It has the blockchain technology is one of the technologies that are part of the Bitcoin protocol, but it's not defined as blockchain. It's defined more as the incentive models that surround the block creation every 10 minutes that make it unique. And whereas everything else doesn't share these unique attributes. It's like saying, let's say gold is, I think, element number 79 on the periodic table, and it can be used as money. It's been used as money for thousands of years. Whereas if you changed any single molecule or element in gold, it would no longer be element number 79. It would no longer be used as money. It's perfect for money in the analog world. But with Bitcoin, the design, it was, when it came out in 2009, it enjoyed irreproducibility. It was perfectly cast for what it is, a perfect store of value and perfect money. It cannot be improved. It's just like when the wheel was discovered or created back, however many thousands of years ago. There's been no improvement on the wheel. The wheel is perfect for what it does. Bitcoin is perfect money. It does what it says it should do. And all these other shitcoins and crypto that have come after Bitcoin, there have been thousands and tens of thousands and 100,000 copycats, and they're all going to zero against Bitcoin. They all go to zero against Bitcoin. So my point to Milei is that you need to just recognize what's going on here with Bitcoin. It'll do what you need your economy to do. He hates the central banks. He hates fiat money. And so by adopting Bitcoin, he's taking steps in that direction. But by allowing crypto and all these other shitcoins to trade, these are just essentially fiat money surrogates. The supply is not capped. There's thousands of them. They're insecure. They get busted. They're broken into. The founders have what are called pre-mined coins, so they're cashing in as the prices go up. They're full of fraud. Ethereum is a fraudulent project. It's very fraudulent. XRP is a fraudulent project. Cardano is a fraudulent project. So all these things are fraud. And whereas Bitcoin has proven to be the best money ever in history, is perfect money. And we see what's happened in El Salvador. The economy is booming, and it's the President Bukele is once in a 500-year leader. He's a genius leader, and add Bitcoin and you end up with what's happening here. It's growing. Tourism's growing. The market is growing. People are very happy. I'll give you a good example, Jimmy. On the southern border, the number of migrants from El Salvador into the U.S. is shrinking. We're at the point now of reverse migration, where there's more Salvadorans in America escaping back to El Salvador than the other way around, because there's more opportunity in El Salvador. Canadians are fleeing to El Salvador. Canadians have given up on Canada, and they're fleeing to El Salvador to pursue economic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Same thing for Australia. You can't swing a dead cat in this country without hitting a Canadian, Jimmy.
Really?
They're everywhere. I mean, I said they should have an El Salvador hockey team. Within 5 years, we could be in the Stanley Cup.
So help me understand the beauty of Bitcoin. You say that these other cryptos like Dogecoin and those other things that I've heard of.
Ethereum was one I thought was like the second best. Is it?
And but so the difference is that Bitcoin, so you can't make more Bitcoin, right? So there's a finite amount of Bitcoin in the world, meaning so that you can't fiat currency it, meaning you can't just start printing more Bitcoin if you want to. Am I getting that straight?
Get back into the word decentralized versus centralized. So with Bitcoin, it's decentralized, and it's impossible to impact the vector that Bitcoin is on. There is no CEO. There is no people at the core of the project. There's no Silicon Valley money behind it. It was just released in 2009, and it's on its own. Nobody can touch it. It's the computational power of Bitcoin is beyond the reach of any government or group of governments band together. If every government in the world got together, all 150 countries, and they said, we're all going to try to attack Bitcoin by joining up our computer power, they would not be able to assault Bitcoin. The computer power is beyond their reach. It has reached escape velocity. It's indestructible. And nobody can impact the fact that every 10 minutes, a new block is hashed. Every 10 minutes. Doesn't matter what the price is. Doesn't matter if China takes all the miners offline for a few months and hash power drops by 40%. Every 10 minutes, Bitcoin is emitted into the network, and it's indestructible. It doesn't change. It's the only regular thing in the universe. It's time itself. It's a fact. It's truth. And as more people realize this, they're taking their investments, they're taking their money, and they're storing it in uncensorable, unconfiscatable Bitcoin. So that's why the market cap is over $1 trillion, and it's heading for a market cap where gold is. Gold is at 16 or 17, 18 trillion. That's where Bitcoin is heading. So it's, this is because it competes with gold, but it's 10 times better, 100 times better than gold. So to get to your point there, the key difference between Bitcoin and everything else is that Bitcoin is absolutely decentralized, whereas everything else is relatively centralized and therefore less secure. So if you want to boil it down to its one word, it would be security. Only Bitcoin offers absolute security. Everything else does not. That's why in the nation state level, only Bitcoin is legal tender here in El Salvador, because it's only project that is absolutely secure. And when you're talking about a nation state, you cannot, mess around with something that's insecure, like every single other project out there.
So when you say that, I have several questions, and I hope I can remember them. So when you say that every 10 minutes there's a new Bitcoin released into the Bitcoin universe, did I hear that right?
A new blockchain. Not the actual
every
coin.
10 minutes, a new block is what's called hashed.
What does that
every
mean?
10 minutes, 3.125 Bitcoins now is released into the network. It started off when I started in Bitcoin back in 2011. Every 10 minutes, 50 new Bitcoin were released into the network. And then every 4 years, that number is cut in half. It's called the halving. We just had a halving. 2 weeks ago, every 10 minutes, it was 6.25 Bitcoin was released into the network. Then that got cut in half. It's now 3.125. So it's actually interesting because that means the inflation rate of Bitcoin, the number of coins released relative to the size of the Bitcoin market, is now less inflation than gold. Gold inflates at around 3% a year. Is a new discovery of new gold per year. And whereas now Bitcoin is under 2%, I believe, is the inflation rate for Bitcoin. So it's becoming the hardest money ever in the history of the world. It's harder than gold. And what I mean by hard and harder is scarcity. So Bitcoin is now scarcer than gold. The ability to create it is now scarcity value versus gold. So it's become even harder, and it gets harder over time, and it gets more secure over time. So more people are parking their capital in it, so the market cap increases, and it's a real attack on fiat money. I think this is what's really shaping the global economy right now, Jimmy, is that central banks are freaking out because they realize that their model of central bank is now being disintermediated by Bitcoin, and that the central banks, and particularly the U.S. central bank, the Fed, is nervous because not only are the BRICS and other nations now getting out of using the dollar completely, they're using their own currencies. So usage of the dollar is declining. But Bitcoin offers things that the dollar can't do. For example, it's uncensorable, whereas in the dollar, using a SWIFT system of global transactions. If you recall, the U.S. Put a sanction on Iran not too long ago, or the U.S. seized some Russian assets recently. With Bitcoin, that's impossible. You can't do it. It's just a free market, and it's a pure free market. And and this is another key point that I say, which I don't think anyone else in the space really pushes this point so much as I do. But Bitcoin demonetizes violence, and it demonetizes war because it is unconfiscatable. So there's no point in trying to rob you of your property if it's impossible for me to obtain your property. If you have a seed phrase to your wallet and it's protected by multi-signatures and it's impossible to get your Bitcoin. So therefore, the whole idea of using violence to obtain wealth or to obtain property is demonetized. It's diminished. And I think this is one of the most profound aspects of Bitcoin. And we see that in El Salvador. There is a real abhorrence by the president of violence. He put 70,000 gangsters in jail, terrorists. He put them in jail. And there's an outbreak of love and peace. I think in part because of Bitcoin. It's really, the attitude here is fantastic. People are optimistic. People are loving life. They have opportunity. And that's very different than any other country in the world right now. Certainly in the U.S. In the U.S., people are kind of downtrodden and depressed for the most part because the dollar is collapsing. The politics is a mess. The economy is shrinking. The cost of a big, McDonald's meal is now out of reach of the average person in America due to inflation. I've been, tweeting, I've been DMing you now for a year about inflation and, sending you tidbits about how this inflation genie was let out of the bottle and it's only going to get worse. They're not going to go back to 2% inflation. Inflation will only increase, substantially from here on. And that wipes out the middle class completely. All wage earners are going to get completely wiped out due to inflation. And it'll wipe out a lot of homeowners with the mortgage problems and mortgage rates. The only people that will do well going forward are people with assets, like chateaus, like paintings, old masters paintings, like gold to some degree, but particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the best performing asset in the world. It's been compounding at a rate of appreciation since 2010 of 70% a year on average. 70% a year on average. Since 2009. So as Paul Tudor Jones, who's a very famous hedge fund guy in Connecticut, he calls it the fastest horse in the race. And that's exactly what it is. Everything's going to zero against Bitcoin. House prices, bonds, stocks, shitcoins, they all go to zero against Bitcoin because nothing will compete with Bitcoin's ability to compound going forward due to its attributes as perfect money that will attract all this capital. The planet Earth has about $400 trillion in capital tied up in various real estate, corporations, cash, etc. That's the total addressable market of Bitcoin. We're at 1 trillion. There's a huge road ahead, a huge price appreciation ahead.
So, okay. I always, what I like about Bitcoin, is so I'm telling people that I'm putting my money in gold, a big chunk of my retirement, right, in gold, and I'm putting some in Bitcoin. I'm putting some in annuities, even though that's what I feel the least safe about. And I'm putting some in T-bills. But so it's not equally split, but it's close. The thing I like about Bitcoin is that what we saw happen with the truckers, right? So the truckers protested the establishment. They turned out they were right. They weren't protesting medicine. They were protesting authoritarianism. And if you protest authoritarianism then drops the hammer on you, and they shut down their bank accounts. And when they shut down your bank account, now you can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay your electric bill. You can't buy gas for your car. You can't travel. You can't do anything, right? But now Bitcoin kind of solves that problem, but right, because they can't do that. The government can't shut down your Bitcoin.
Right. I wrote a piece for Huffington Post back in 2014 called "Bitcoin Should Be Embraced by All Activists."
So, and Bobby Kennedy made that point. You know how
exactly. So, freedom of speech and freedom of having uncensorable money are pari passu the same thing. You know, we when we do a transaction, you and I peer to peer. It should be uncensored. There shouldn't be an intermediary telling us what to do with that transaction, just like there should not be an intermediary telling us what to say to each other. And so Bitcoin is to money what the First Amendment is to free speech. And it's without it, you can't even have free speech, because if all the channels of speech are controlled by centralized corporations with an agenda, then you don't have freedom of money or free speech. If you fix the money and adopt Bitcoin, which is uncensorable and unconfiscatable, then free speech and civil rights and everything else comes on top of that. But fix the money first, and then you can build a society that reflects economic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to worship, etc. It's freedom comes from freedom of transaction, freedom of money. And only Bitcoin offers that because it separates state from money. I mean, the history of money essentially is, within the last few hundred years, is that it is something created by the state, right? The state typically has a monopoly on creating money, and they therefore have the ability to use that printing press to achieve an economic agenda, which may or may not be in tune with the democratic wishes of the population. I think in America, when you see outcry about money being sent to Ukraine, for example, well, the government prints the money. I mean, and no one's going to stop them. They can print it and ship it to Ukraine. Now, what we're seeing now is that, of course, all that money ends up causing inflation, and then the inflation is bankrupting the middle class, and people are outraged, and they say, stop sending money to Ukraine. But to get more to the point, they should be protesting about getting rid of fiat money and adopting Bitcoin, as we do in El Salvador, and you too can enjoy the Salvadoran miracle.
So, my question is, now, if I was a trucker and they shut off my bank account, let's say I was protesting the government, which people are doing right now in the United States, from coast to coast, they're protesting the funding of a war in Gaza. And so theoretically, the government could turn off their bank accounts and stop their money. But if they had Bitcoin, how would they spend that Bitcoin? Like, I can't go to the gas station and use Bitcoin, but you can do that in El Salvador?
Yes. Yes, you can.
What?
It's a circular Bitcoin economy. It's all in Bitcoin. I mean, you can just use Bitcoin your entire life in El Salvador if you want. The adoption rate is increasing every month, every year, and but if you can do it now. So in Bitcoin Beach, you know, my friend Mike Peterson of Bitcoin Beach, he started the Bitcoin revolution in El Zonte, El Salvador, and the circular economy in El Zonte by giving all the pupusa sellers and everybody in town some free Bitcoin. And they said, just transact in Bitcoin, because the surfers that were arriving in El Zonte, they had different currencies from different countries, and there was no way for the local business people to accept that foreign money, and they don't take credit cards, and they're unbanked. So these guys would have to go 20 miles down the road to an ATM and try to get cash. And it was very cumbersome. But on a Bitcoin standard, it doesn't matter where you come from, or any country, any currency. If you have a Bitcoin, you can transact because the local commercial people take Bitcoin, and it's an instantaneous transaction, and there's nobody who's going to stop them. You cannot interrupt or censor that transaction.
But here in the United States, that wouldn't really help me, right? Because nobody takes Bitcoin here.
Well, I mean, the adoption of, why? You see what I'm saying? Like, the center of freedom has moved from the U.S. to El Salvador. So this is what I'm telling people: leave the U.S. because it's sucking hind tit. The U.S. is now at the back of the queue. They're no longer the shining city on the hill. It's a fucking zoned out, fentanyl addicted, homeless person, on the parking lot dying from, whatever. That's like, the U.S. is now the place to leave. It's a shithole. It's the banana republic. When the President McIlhany gave his recent speech to CPAC, he was talking about inflation in the U.S. and how America is now monetizing their own debt. America prints money to buy its own debt because nobody else in the world wants to buy American debt. It's called debt monetization. And back 50 years ago, people in the U.S. would look at Central America and say, ha ha, you have to buy your own debt. You're a banana republic. And so here you have the president of El Salvador lecturing people in Washington at CPAC about the fact that you guys are now monetizing your own debt. I suggested to the president, as the Bitcoin advisor to the president, that he should include a line in CPAC that said, "Who's the banana republic now, bitch?" But he opted not to use that phraseology, sadly. I think it would have gone viral. But like everything I've suggested to the president so far in my 2 years here, he has pretty much rejected every one of my suggestions. But nevertheless, I keep trying.
So there really has been a big change in El Salvador, and it's because of this president, and he did put all the criminals in jail, and people didn't think he could do that, and he did it, and then he did adopt Bitcoin, and there does seem to be, from my perspective, and I'm no genius, but it does seem to be, there is a kind of revolution of freedom happening in El Salvador, and all things are looking up, and Bitcoin is a big part of that, because it's exactly as you've been explaining, that it's decentralized. They can't stop you. They can't control you like they could control us here in the United States and Canada, and everywhere else, which they've already done. And then what the United States is doing, which is a huge mistake, they're doing it around the world, is they are weaponizing the dollar, right? So the world uses the American dollar as its reserve currency. And the worst thing you could do is to weaponize it, meaning sanction people. And so what they're doing to Russia, and when you talked about the SWIFT, the way they, so there's the, how would you describe what SWIFT is? SWIFT is like what is SWIFT?
It's a global dollar money rail. People use, when you send money from country to country, they ask for your SWIFT number of the bank that is receiving this money. So it's the U.S. has a monopoly on this, and the U.S. is world reserve currency since World War II.
It's like the Venmo. It's like the Venmo of the world, right? To make someone like me understand it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so what the United States has done recently is try to kick Russia out of SWIFT. And so
they kicked Iran off of SWIFT, and they sanctioned Russia and seized Russian assets. And so with your point is they've weaponized the dollar, which is a terrible thing to do, because these countries are then motivated to come up with something other than the dollar.
Which is what BRICS
exactly what they're doing. So the BRICS nations are getting aggressively off the dollar. Global usage of the dollar is plummeting. And, this means that the U.S. empire, which is based on the globe using the U.S. dollar, is disintegrating. Without that, the income that comes from being the global bank, you lose a huge amount of cash that comes into the coffers of Washington. And, it's a Ponzi scheme. And the Ponzi scheme only works if there's people constantly who believe in the Ponzi scheme and who support the Ponzi scheme. Once people realize, oh my God, this is a Ponzi scheme, and they leave, the whole thing collapses rapidly, like at the end of any empire. And
So-
that's at the stage we're at now. The U.S. empire, the U.S. dollar empire, is the last inning of a massive Ponzi scheme that's been going on for 50, 60 years. And when it collapses, it'll happen like building number 7. You know, it'll just be free falling in its own space, and everyone will wonder, how did that happen? It was so sudden. You know, they'll make up some excuses, but it'll be quick and devastating.
And so why wouldn't the United States and NATO just say that the people in El Salvador need some democracy and then overthrow their government, which is what we always do? Why wouldn't we overthrow this new president and then install a puppet, get rid of crypto, and then everything's back to normal?
Well, 2 answers. Number one, El Salvador is solving a big problem for America on the southern border. You know, their southern border is out of control. And they look at El Salvador and they notice that less and less Salvadorans are making the trip north. So they're actually loving President Bukele because he's helping them with a big problem that they have at the southern border. And they are now rooting for other countries to do the same, to follow in the Bukele model. And this would stem the number of migrants who are crossing the southern border. Number two, to your point, it is a struggle. You know, we are dealing with the IMF. So the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is, you know, John Perkins wrote about this in his Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which he worked for the bankers and the IMF. And when a Southern American country or Central American country did something that the bankers on Wall Street didn't like, they would send in the economic hitman, and they would, in fact, you know, throw him out of an airplane, the leader of that country, et cetera. And the history is replete with examples of this. It's not debated. This is exactly what they do and have been done. Today, we've got the IMF fulfilling that role. It's trying to get as many countries in the world to get on the U.S. dollar. You know, Donald Trump said last week that he's going to go after countries that stop using the dollar. And so they're very nervous. They're very nervous about the fact that the dollar is losing world reserve currency. There's nothing they can do about it. But, you know, with the IMF, President Bukele has pretty much gone toe to toe, let's say, with the IMF. And he's in the process now of exiting the IMF. So the economy is growing sufficiently without the IMF's help. Thank you very much. The balance sheet of the country, by the way, the balance sheet of El Salvador, the country has hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion in Bitcoin. They're putting Bitcoin on their reserves, which helps them grow outside of all this fiat money madness. So not only do they use it as day-to-day legal tender, but the country itself has put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We have an adopting El Salvador passport program. People are sending us $1 million in donation to get a El Salvadoran passport within 2 weeks. And then that money goes into Bitcoin. We've got some other financial kind of architecting that's going on, which is favoring Bitcoin. So that not only is the country have Bitcoin as legal tender, but it'll become a fully reserved Bitcoin country, which means that it'll be potentially the richest country in the world, because all these other countries are going to die into fiat money madness. They're all throwing this. Let me tell you, El Salvador is the next Singapore. And the GDP here is going to triple in the next, 5, 6, 7 years. This is the place to be, Jimmy. The U.S. is a fucking shithole. I mean, if you want to waste your time in that godforsaken hellhole, have at it. But if you want to be part of the revolution where people are optimistic and building the future, and there's economic freedom and freedom of speech, there's only one country in the world, and that's El Salvador. Get on a plane, come on down here. We'll set you up with a podcast. We got a beautiful studio. Taste freedom. I will baptize you in the Pacific Ocean and turn you into a Bitcoin maximalism. I have that role here. I'm the high priest of Bitcoin in El Salvador, and I will baptize you in the waters of the Pacific and Bitcoin Beach, and you will start, you and Steph, a future of optimism, and leave that godforsaken, fentanyl, rattled, idle shithole behind, Jimmy.
So what is Bitcoin trading at right now today?
Last I checked, it was in the mid 60,000, 60, what was it? 60,000, 63,000, whatever.
Okay. So let me just this. So this is the president. How do you say his name? Bukele. So extraordinary El Salvador.
Or if you're Alex Jones, you can pronounce it Bukele.
Bukele, okay. It's like Barack Obama.
Yeah. You keep saying it. I'm like, Alex, his name is President Bukele.
So President Bukele
President Bukele has issued a.
So his whole thing is he's against corruption. He cleaned up the criminals, and he gave a speech.
Como pueden ver ustedes todos.
Turn it down. So he says he brings everybody in there, everybody from his executive branches in this room, and everybody that he oversees, except for one person, the Attorney General. He has the Attorney General there who he does not oversee. He's not part of the executive branch. And the reason he's there, one simple reason, this is what he's saying, is that he wants to ask him publicly to investigate everyone sitting in that room. So everyone part of his administration, everybody in the executive branch, he said he wants them to invest retroactively and in the future. And he says there should be no problem with that. Someone would ask me, are you afraid of death? He says, I said, of course, nobody wants to die. I don't want to die. But I know that I'll die someday like anyone else. 100 years from now, everybody in this room will be dead. None of us are going to still be alive. This is the president of El Salvador talking. And he said it's very likely that nobody here knows their grandfather's father's name. I don't. But if there is one thing I do fear, he says he fears leaving a bad legacy. There are some presidents, some in prison and some on the run. But the most are remembered as criminals, most of the presidents. That's not how I want to be remembered. And he says, so I don't steal because I don't want to be remembered as a criminal or as corrupt. But for one president, President Duarte, people back then used to say that he wasn't a thief, but the people who surrounded him were thieves. There was a time when he offered hope for the Salvadorian people. But even if it's true that he didn't steal, then he was foolish because he was the people's hope and he didn't touch a cent of the money, and he still stained his legacy by surrounding himself with thieves. That won't happen to me. I won't be the president that didn't steal but was surrounded by criminals. I want to be remembered as the president who didn't steal and didn't let anybody else steal either. And the one who put whoever stole in prison. There's a couple who are already there. So that's a big deal for him to say. So he is asking the Attorney General of El Salvador, investigate everybody in my administration, everybody in the executive branch, what they did in the past, what they're doing currently, doing in the future, investigate. So what makes him, what's the significance of that and what makes him say that?
He hates corruption. And he's told the Attorney General to investigate every minister in the country for any corruption or wrongdoing. And if he finds any, put him in jail. Because it's a drag on the economy and it's not good for the country. And the people that gave him an 87% vote in the last election, just a few months ago, this is what they demand. President Bukele serves the people. The people want no more corruption. So he's going to get rid of anybody who is corrupt.
I mean,
he got rid of the gangsters.
It looks crazy hearing someone say those things. It's a leader of a country.
Well, I mean, all he does is all day long. I mean, I've had the pleasure of spending some time with him and talking to him a little bit. And, he is a guy who all he does 24 hours a day is think about how to improve the country. And he looks at every single detail. I was at a dinner not too long ago, and he was talking about the restrooms at the airport needed to be cleaner. And I'm like, what? 10 minutes before that, he was talking about a $1 billion bond offering. And then he segues right into the details of what people experience at the airport. And this is the mind of like a Steve Jobs meets JFK, right? He's a JFK. He's about energizing people to do something for their country. And at the same time, he's like Steve Jobs, where he can keep 10,000 details in his head and just execute as an executive so many brilliant things, like just changing the tourist visa from 90 days to 180 days. So now suddenly all that tourist money is here for twice as long. That's an easy fix. He did it in a day. He had the idea. He changed it. The next day it was changed. So he's just like rapid fire going through this enormous list of tasks to do, and he's getting things done. Infrastructure, roads, everything is done. He's getting it all done. And
so
corruption.
Why wouldn't? So how is he not? And not, I don't mean to be morbid or dark, but usually when someone comes along like that, they kill them, just like they did JFK and RFK. And so, how is he avoiding being assassinated? It's a serious question.
Well, he has a security detail, and like any president, and they're doing a good job. Let's hope that the president continues in doing his job. I think that if you look at the folks, the enemy, the U.S., the CIA, the FBI, like the CIA can't even do a coup anymore. Like I think they tried a coup in Venezuela now twice in the last 10 years.
Yes,
and they failed. Like they're completely inept. Like the CIA from the 60s and 70s that we remember, they're gone. It's now a bunch of fumbling jackasses who are smoke pot and watch porn all day. Like they're just like fat slobs. They don't know shit. So they don't even know how to do a coup anymore. They just get free money from the Fed and they just go down to the porno shop and they smoke a bong. They're like completely worthless. So they're in a fiat money standard. And within the U.S. government, I call it the fifth column. You now have senators and congresspeople in the U.S. government that are Bitcoiners. So that's our fifth column. There's a soft coup in America right now by Bitcoiners who are in the U.S. government right now, like Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. She's a Bitcoin maximalist. She is part of the fifth column. She's a Bitcoiner. And now every single day you hear, I think Rand Paul is a Bitcoiner. Ted Cruz is a Bitcoiner. It tends to be more on the conservative side for sure, but it's foolishly because Bitcoin to me is a leftist paradise. Everything the left complains about, you can solve it with Bitcoin. But but nevertheless, so this is all being mobilized within the government. So the U.S. government is collapsing. The fiat money world is collapsing. I don't think they'll have the wherewithal to do these types of things anymore. They're a spent force. They just don't have it anymore. And it's just we can't think of them like we do like from the 70s, really. It's a clown show. It's a clown car. They don't know how to fucking whip their way out of a paper bag. They suck.
Okay, I only have 5 minutes left, and so I want to ask you about this. BlackRock just hosted a Bitcoin conference with industry leaders at its own headquarters. If you want to buy Signal, this is it. $100,000 is practically guaranteed, meaning that Bitcoin will go from 60,000, what it is now, to 100,000 because now the big guys are getting in and buying it. Is that what that means?
Yeah, Larry Fink works for me. Michael Saylor works for me. Everyone who's a big institutional buyer of Bitcoin is my employee. They're making my Bitcoin go higher. Thank you. It's a complete reversal of everything that we've ever grown up with. Usually Wall Street comes in first and then they sell to the retail over years later and usually at a horrible price. The insiders get the best price and then they sell it out and the retailers get the worst price. Here it's complete opposite. All the plebs and the cypherpunks and the marginal losers of society, like myself, were buying at $1. And now here we are at $65,000, $70,000. And now the Wall Street's coming in now. Like they're just coming in. So we're like, okay, I just made 5 million% on my Bitcoin. You're going to make me another 1,000,000%. Thank you very much, Wall Street. So bring it. Come on, bring all that money. Come on. It doesn't impact Bitcoin in any way. It doesn't centralize Bitcoin in any way. It doesn't hurt Bitcoin in any way. So why not? Bring it all. Bitcoin is, as I said, it's indestructible. It's unconfiscatable. It's uncensorable. It's on its own vector. No one can stop it. It's eating the fiat money world, which is $400 trillion in size. Back in the 80s, there was a phrase that software is eating the world. Right? Every corporation became a software corporation, right? McDonald's is a software corporation. They're using software to figure out how to sell hamburgers. Car rentals, a software company. Software companies are software companies. Everything's a software company in the end of the day. And they're run by algorithms. Google, Meta, Apple, everything's a software company. Well, now apply that to Bitcoin and money. Every single thing that can be traded for Bitcoin will be traded for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is eating the world.
How's the sushi and the Italian food in El Salvador?
There's there's a new pizza joint called Nomad here in the presidential tower, and it's the best pizza in El Salvador. Italian food, there's Pomodoro is an Italian restaurant, which is very good in the San Benito area. The sushi is, there's a lot of sushi shops, but I'll tell you this, Jimmy, if you go down to El Zonte and you're driving down the highway and you see on the side of the road people selling oysters and mussels, I don't recommend it.
Okay.
Unless you're Salvadoran, it could cause severe gastrointestinal problems. You need to be Salvadoran to get into, if it's out in the hot sun all day, I don't recommend that. But pupusa, which is the national dish, you can buy pupusa for 80 cents and it'll fill you up and you're good to go all day.
Okay, Max Kaiser, I have to run. I appreciate you making time for us. I look forward to talking to you again. Everybody, where should people check you out at, Max?
Twitter.
Max?
Or I should say X, right? Max Kaiser.
I don't. I say Twitter still.
We still say Twitter, but okay.
Yeah, generally where I'm at is Max Kaiser. And I'm shit posting all day and causing a ruckus all day, and everyone hates me so much. I can't wait to get up in the morning to cause more people anxiety.
All right, Max Kaiser, thank you so much, buddy. I got to run. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Do I have to leave? All right. Thank you, Max. See you in the future. Okay, go ahead. And as Jimmy gets ready, no problem here. You just tell me when you're ready, Jimmy, and we'll throw it back to you. Benjamin.
Okay, come to me.
Oh, back to Jimmy. That was fast.
Hey, are you Sleepy Joe who has zero cognitive performance, scared of walking upstairs without being worried you're going to fall down? Do you struggle to muster the focus and brain power for the basic things in life, such as eating ice cream or riding a bike? Well, you need to stop drinking. You need to stop drinking woke liberal coffee and start your day by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. Never mind, that will be the best tasting coffee you ever had in your frickin' life, as it's seriously good. It's also ethically sourced from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. So instead of waking up tomorrow morning and drinking your mold-infested, big corporation-owned, woke ideology coffee that is probably making you sick from the pesticides it's sprayed with, try Rumble's 1775 coffee. Support freedom of speech and build a parallel economy that actually values you. And if you go to 1775coffee.com right now and pick up your first bag, use the code DORE, that's D-O-R-E, to save 10% off your first order. Steph's favorite roast is medium dark pea berry. That's no. Steph's favorite roast is dark. There's different kinds. There's medium, there's pea berry, but dark is Steph's favorite roast. She drinks it all the time. I can't because I only drink decaf. So this is calf coffee. You won't regret it for one moment. Level up your morning routine with a bag of 1775 coffee and sleep well at night knowing that your hard-earned dollars are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators like Mia and Rumble, not the woke mob. How was that?
Wow, nice work, kiddo.
Hey, have you heard of cancer-fighting foods? The American Cancer Society discovered diets rich in fruits and vegetables may actually lower your risk of cancer. Hopefully, you hear this and run out to the store for 5 servings of fruit and vegetables every day. But if you don't do that, which I don't, consider adding Field of Greens to your daily health regimen. Each fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was doctor-selected for and studied for health benefits. There's a heart health group, there's lungs, kidneys, and metabolism groups. Even healthy weight. What your body needs is an each scoop of delicious Field of Greens. And it is delicious. I do like it. Will Field of Greens prevent, treat, or cure cancer? No. But it's so powerful, it promises at your next checkup that your doctor will notice your improved health or your money frickin' back. That's what it says right here. I'm not making it up. And I'm going to get you 15% off a free rush shipping. How about that? Free rush shipping and 15% off. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Use the promo code Jimmy for your discount. That's promo code Jimmy at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Thank you very much. Over to Steph.
All right, Jimmy, are you taking off?
Yes.
All right, okay. Jimmy is taking off, and you'll be back on Friday?
I will be back on Friday.
People want to know.
I'm going to be here on Friday. I love Fridays.
You got to be careful of your little dog beside your foot.
I'm going to be careful of my little dog.
She's not even moving her head as you're moving.
Jesus Christ.
She's just sitting right there, Jimmy.
What a terrible pillow.
What are you doing, little girl? Careful. All right, have fun, Jimmy. Okay, stand by. Okay. Let me put one more thing on. And Kurt, you can stay if you want.
I'm going to go.
You're going to go?
Wait, what's happening now?
Nothing.
Oh.
I'm just reading the chats. Okay, you were allowed to leave.
Oh, yeah, because I got a ride coming.
Yeah, you got a ride. All right, here we go. Camera 4 beside staff. All right. And I'm wearing my National Health System t-shirt that our friend Jean gave to us when we were, was it Jean? Was it in, where were we, Jean? Was it in Sweden? Huh? Right? It was. I have a photo of you, Jean, because you said the woman with purple hair. And I have the t-shirts, 2 of them, Jean. And also, I have the book that you gave us about the national health care system. It's tragic what they're doing to that. And so I'm going to keep reading it. Ooh, let's see when I get through that. They're going to say
it doesn't work after they fuck it up.
Yeah, they're fucking it up right now.
It doesn't work.
They're fucking it up for, the people there. All right, bye, dude.
Bye, guys.
All right, see you later. I have a vagina. I'm not a guy. All right, here we go. AOC will be Nancy Pelosi in 60 years. Notably dumb. Vodka boobs Pelosi should trend on X. Jack in a box. No wonder Drew hasn't ever been kissed. Notably dumb. Fear works. Congressman Jim McDermott, D. Washington, in Fahrenheit 9/11. Vienticus Prime. Steph, my wife and I really enjoyed your set and Jimmy's at San Antonio show on Sunday. That was a great show. Please come back sometime soon. I missed out on whatever the VIP thing was. Hopefully next time, maybe. Fingers crossed. Rocket Mummy. Vote harder. That will fix it. Notably dumb. Vote harder. Carvel is the love child of Gollum and Orville Redenbacher. Silvius Tryphon. Thank you, Silvius. I'm going to say it again. Start asking people, if Israel attacked America, who would you side with? Ooh, look at you. Tricky. Since people can't say Oriental anymore, I now want to identify as a New Worlder. Brewdog. Did you see Ryan Grimm Job get embarrassed and reprimanded by Fat Sauger at State Department press room? Hilarious. Jack in a Box? No, I did not see that. Since people can't say, oh, I read that one. Brewdog. Brewdog. Okay. You may be tired of this, but I want to say my condolences concerning Jimmy's dad. MQ, thank you for that. We really do appreciate it. Since people can't say, I keep doing that. Okay. I'm going to start asking, oh, I did read that one, Vienticus Prime. How did Mexico achieve the peaceful defeat of neoliberalism before anyone else in North America? I don't know, Dan. Okay. September 2014, Biden used the Jewish slur, name of the crook from Merchant of Venice, Shylock, to describe people ripping off veterans. He did. He said some crazy Zionist stuff around then, and I got confused. All right, Bimfix, thank you for that one. IsraelQuotes.com, have fun, Vienticus Prime. The issue is very real, but yeah, many of those kids are protesting because they've been trained since kindergarten to be activists above all. They have Ukraine flags and pronouns in their bios too, mediocre, which they sure do. Have you seen Doug McGregor with Russell Brand? No, hold on. Power just got unplugged. He's done with Trump and also mocked the paragon of manhood, Lindsey Graham, LOL. Can you bring on Doug and Scott Ritter? Also, Alex Jones and Jackson. I will share that with the team, CJ. Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. John 14:27. I'd rather be ironing. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. Thank you for the sentiments. Benjamin Friedman, 1961 speech. I have to check that one out. Thank you for the recommendation. Okay, here we go. Where is it? All right, hold on here. Okay. Bitcoin is controlled. BlackRock has an ETF derived from Bitcoin. They can influence, even control the price with their buy or sell orders. Oh, this is going to be, hey, Kurt, I left you some love a few days ago, but you had left already. I just want to tell you that you're always so funny and very clever, and I love you, man. Love Steph, too. You and Jimmy, too. Number one show, Forensic Darling. Thank you, Forensic Darling. All right, let's do this. And let's do this. And... okay. and keep going. I have to, let me open a couple of these now. Okay, this is crazy how this is going to happen. Open. Okay. All right, 90% of everything else Max said is true. Carrie Sayers. Max Kaiser and TYT espouse the same silly position about the false illusion of fumbling, incompetent CIA who just recently couped Haiti and is actively keeping the country in chaos. Red flag, blank state. Every time I have to listen to an economist, I feel like I deserve compensation, JM. But do they use glyphosate on their agriculture in El Salvador? Taxi churro. That's a great question. All right. Oops, Bitcoin. I did not get to story titles. Just so you know, if you're asking me that, I did not. I started and then there was a lot of action going on. A lot of action. Okay, let's try to do this. Come on. All right. Wokeness is a moving target. Stephen Dodds. Thank you, Stephen. Rogan thinks the students are misguided. Listen to his recent podcast with Tulsi. Mackie, I read that when you said it, and I just saw that Tulsi was on talking about her book. That's interesting. Really? Misguided how? Jimmy, I was on your side in terms of the Americans not being able to afford a home and afford an emergency. Then I watched Financial Audit and realized most are just spending money like a drunk sailor on shore leave. Stephen, listen. Are you saying people are just crazy with their money? They don't know any better how to save their money in this economy? I challenge that. I don't buy that. I know plenty of teachers that live paycheck to paycheck. They have a family. Yes, they have health care, but it makes it very difficult to raise a family and save money. Jim, gold is a negative beta asset. Negative beta means it is in the stock market inverse. Gold is not the only or even best negative beta asset. Please interview Dr. Suzanne Trimbath or Dave Lauer. Devanes. Thank you for that recommendation. Much appreciated. Okay, hold on. What was this one? Unpopular but correct opinion. We should have never left the Stone Age. Civilization is now what we think it is. It's a cancer, not progress, a fundamental upside-down belief of this culture. Really? You know, we did not get to this, Jones. Please, pretty please ask Max his thoughts on the significance of Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin holdings and what the potential consequences are should he make a change with those holdings. That's a great question. It's very hard to get to these questions when we're live with these interviews. Thank you for understanding, folks. All right, let's see what this one is. Wow, Rumble is actually letting me chat today. Usually it says I need to verify my account first, but doesn't provide any way for me to do that. Stupid Rumble. Hannah, sir, that's what you did with your chat? They finally let you chat. Come on, Hannah, sir. But you got to admit that Rumble is at least providing another avenue for us. This is idiotic. Salvadorians and tourists are flocking to El Salvador because of Bukele imprisoned gang members and others, and crime dropped to near zero, not due to effing Bitcoin. My real name. Look at you. Challenging. All right, let's see here. If you are done, when you're done, you can take off, Pumpkin.
Okay. I have a lot because I have one.
I have like about 20. Okay. But if you get pooped out and you go, you know what, this is shit. Why am I listening to this? All right. I got to go. You're welcome to. All right. Let's go here. Anarchists don't praise Thatcher and the CIA. Max Kaiser is either blank or a bad actor like Milton Friedman, who famously praised Augusto Pinochet, hailing him as the father of neoliberalism. Blank slate. The value of crypto is literally dependent on the value of fiat. If your fiat currency loses value, your crypto is worthless in your country. Ain't nobody gonna trade food for fake numbers on a screen. Blank state. This guy wants to take my dollars and give me Bitcoin because my dollars are worthless, but he wants my dollars. Oh, look at you, troglodyte. Interesting. Are you competing with my dog right now? Fret Pound, it would be a shame if the market looked pathetic when we were claiming to damage the Russian economy. So funny that 7 corporations are kicking ass and doing government's bidding while he rests is weak. All right. And that was Fret Pound. It would be a shame. I read that one. Fret Pound. You were smooth up until that last moment. Max participated in the fraud. He had Max Coin. Bitcoin, it is hackable. Reference Colonial Pipeline ransomware, where the feds got back 2/3 of the Bitcoin paid. Harry, they got, really? The feds got back 2/3 of the Bitcoin. That's interesting. Now I want to read about that. Will I? Probably not. I want to, Carrie, but will I? I'll forget. And I'll go, I have to do something else like eat. The thing to remember about anything used as currency is that only has the value that people agree on, Beaticus Prime. Let's do this. Malay is also in bed with the IMF, Beaticus Prime. Okay, let's grab those. Okay, I'm lying probably 20 now. All right, there's a lot of them. And I didn't open them the way I usually open them. Super chats we got through you girls. Let's see here. Jean, you see I put your t-shirt on, girl? Because I really, such a big deal what you were sharing with us. I really appreciated it. All right, let's do this. Okay. All right. I know you're going, what is she doing? There, it's a little harder. Doesn't Kaiser look like James Carville? Sounds too funny. Semtic, thank you. Jim, gold is a negative beta asset. I read that one. Are you actually going to address the NYPD arrests of outside agitators / professional protesters, for example, on Fox or Rolling Stone? No punctuation, really. It's not profane to suggest these protests are now being hijacked by Marxists with other motivations in mind. It happened with Occupy Wall Street. Well, if you watched on Monday, Musically Assured, you also saw the moment on, I forget which college campus it was, that the college students, what they would do, and a lot of times when you do protests, you can't use amplification. And so they were repeating what the lead voice was saying, and then somebody in the middle said, kill the Jews. And what that was able to do is it undermined all the protests. They arrested all of them. And so we have some coverage on Monday. James Carville, old man yells at cloud trying to dress like a young whippersnapper. Hello, fellow kids. My real name. Argentines often use Bitcoin to circumvent exchange restrictions. The peso is worthless. Milei is not who you think he is, Max. Look at the company he keeps. My real name. Sick of the endless frenzied hamster wheel rat race that is capitalism and chasing an imaginary resource, money, having to slave every day and barely get to live. Wake up, programmed bots. Why are you okay with this, Hannah, sir? You need to have Dr. Chris Martenson on to discuss FASAB, F-A-S-A-B, corporations being exempted from correctly reporting their finances if someone deems it crucial to national security. Bush Sr. signed it in 2006. Fret Pound. Javier Milei is a WEF stooge. Jimmy Dore fans fomenting community. I completely agree with your guest, but he is terrible at explaining it. Invite me on. I've got you. Anarchist prison memoirs. No punctuality. Bitcoin is a scam, fundamentally worthless. It doesn't matter how secure or resource intensive it is. All cryptocurrency are basically like that. Only real goods and services have value. Non-punctuality. Thank you. Okay. Really coming down, really at the end of it, ladies and gentlemen. This is it, girls. About 10 more. Every account and transaction is recorded on blockchain. What is free? It's all traceable. What the F is he talking about? And who is that from? Troglodyte. Thank you, Troglodyte. All money is imaginary, illusory. If you can't use it immediately, meet your needs, i.e. eat, drink it, etc. People want to hold on to this illusory way of life instead of preparing for its inevitable death. Hannah, sir. Of course you can use violence to get Bitcoin. It's called a hammer attack, as in you threaten to beat someone with a hammer unless you give you their keys, ... All right. Coming down the wire here, trying to figure this out. I thought this was the way to go, but it did not work out the way I wanted it to. I'm rusty at it. I haven't done it for 2 weeks? Right? Really, I haven't been in the studio for at least 2 weeks, right? Seems like that. It's been a while, girls. Every time I have to listen to an economist, I know you want to be compensated. That's J.M. Berber. See this one? But you can't make government accept Bitcoin for taxes and even to convert it back into their currency if they don't want to. Truthful agave. Consider the possibility that someone is whipping up all the gender studies majors to make people equate genocide protests with things like just stop oil, delegitimizes a genuine movement. Mediocre witch. Come on, girls. Bitcoin and other fake crypto assets are seized by governments, including the United States, literally all the time. Read a fucking newspaper sometime. Satoshi Nakamoto is a Fed. Blank state. Come on. Bitcoin is not medium of exchange. Visa does 250,000 transactions per second. Bitcoin does 6 per second. Carrie Sayers. Carrie, thank you. But you can't make a government accept of that. So I read that one, Truth Agave. Oh, I feel him coming down. Bitcoin is not money. It isn't backed by anything of value. Try transacting when any node doesn't have power. Carrie Sayers. Interesting points, folks. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've read DOJ press releases about civil and criminal cases in which the feds confiscated people's Bitcoins. Really? Bitcoin is not a medium exchange. Read that one. That's Carrie Sayers. Hannah says, societies don't need to be built. If you think yours does, it's too large. To be sustainable, a group needs to not disturb nature too much. If you're not sustainable, that means you don't last. Okay. And, all right, I read all of those. Let me see if I have anything else here. Black Cat in 07, you said 4. I wonder what that meant, 4. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got through as much as I could that we were able to get to today. And let me make sure I have one more thing over here. Got it, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that's it for today, and thank you so much. And maybe I'll see you in Denver, or maybe I'll see you at the Zephyr, or Ashland, or Georgia, or Williams Center, or Parkway Theater, or the Improv Comedy Club in Ontario, or Irvine, or Davenport, Iowa, or Chicago. That'll be fun. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back on Friday. Usually we start at what time now on Fridays? 1 p.m. 1 p.m. on Friday. And why don't you go and do something nice for somebody? Huh? Bye.
Hey, get this. So we all know that the mainstream news media is not reliable. How can you trust them when they've never told you the truth about Russiagate, Ukraine, COVID, lockdowns, anything? That's where our sponsor, we have a new sponsor, Ground News, comes in handy. Ground News is an app and a website. And what they do is they gather related articles from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. So it's not, they don't generate the news, they compile the news, and then they give you the visual breakdown of the news outlets and tell you if the source has a political bias, and if it does, what's the political bias, and how reliable that the reporting is, and who owns them. So it's super helpful and transparent. Check this out. So like if you search Russia-Ukraine, search Russia-Ukraine war, and you'll see how it's covered. Here we see 111 total news sources. 18 of them are left-leaning. 9 are right-leaning, and 27 of them are centrist. The bias distribution is 50% center, and it even shows their logos along with their factuality and ownership. So this is a pretty helpful, dare I say, use an old-timey term, this is a neat website. So this is a good way to do your own research. So you get there, you see that they help you by seeing what the bias is, by who owns these news outlets, but they compiles all different kinds of sources around one news story. So it gets you access to independent and international perspectives, not just nationalist sources with the same political agenda. It helps you find the discrepancies in how certain topics are covered and shows you how corporate agendas can influence the news you read. Sounds a lot like this show. Sounds like this website does what this show does. Sounds nice. So if you want to see it for yourself, go to ground.news/JD. Ground.news/JD. Use the link below, and we're going to get you 40% off unlimited access. Go to ground.news/JD, and we're going to get you 40% off unlimited access. Think critically about the news you consume.
Isn't it swell? The memes make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical grace soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit